Tune in for a tale, words that set sail.
Digital Splendor, Literature Illuminated.
So, you've probably heard of Gulliver's Travels. You know, the story about the guy who ends up in a land of tiny people. Most of us think of it as a fun, whimsical kid's adventure, but that's just the cover story. For centuries, that simple tale has been the perfect disguise for one of the sharpest, angriest, and funniest critiques of humanity ever put to paper. We're going to peel back those layers and find the masterpiece hiding inside. Just listen to this. This is a quote from Gulliver himself at the very end of the book. He calls all of humanity yahoos and says we are completely, utterly beyond saving. Wow, pretty harsh, right? There's nothing whimsical about that. It's pure disgust. And that shocking endpoint tells you everything you need to know about where this journey is really headed. So that's the big question, isn't it? How does a story that we all know as this simple adventure come from a place of such deep anger? Well, to figure that out, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to start right where Gulliver did, on his very first voyage. And that, of course, takes us to the land of Lilliput. This is where the author, Jonathan Swift, first unleashes his big idea. He's going to completely change the scale of the world to show us just how absurd our own world really is. Okay, picture the scene. It's the one we all recognize. Gulliver washes up on a shore, totally exhausted, and when he wakes up, he's tied down by thousands of tiny threads. He's been captured by the Lilliputians, these 6-inch-tall people who see him as some kind of terrifying man-mountain. And right here, seeing our world through their tiny eyes, is where Swift starts to work his magic. This part is just brilliant. The Lilliputians go through Gulliver's pockets and try to figure out what all his stuff is. His snuff box? It's a huge silver chest that makes them sneeze. His pocket watch? It's a mysterious globe that makes a constant noise. By describing these totally normal everyday objects from a completely alien perspective, Swift makes them seem bizarre and ridiculous. And that, right there, is the key to his whole plan. But Swift doesn't stop with just making fun of our stuff. He takes that exact same trick, that distortion of perspective, and he aims it at something much, much bigger: politics. He gives us a front row seat to how people get power in the royal court of Lilliput. So how do you get ahead in the Lilliputian government? Is it about being wise or having great ideas? Nope. You have to be good at dancing on a tightrope. Seriously, whoever jumps the highest without breaking their neck gets the job. And this wasn't just some random, silly idea. Swift was taking a direct shot at the English court, saying its politicians were just performers, risking it all in these meaningless games to impress the king. And if you think that's absurd, it gets even better. Another way to win the emperor's favor is to play a game of limbo. The emperor and his top minister hold out a stick, and all the candidates have to leap over it and crawl under it. And the prize for being the most agile? It's not some powerful position. It's a piece of colored string to wear. The message couldn't be clearer. Getting ahead in politics is just a silly game of bending over backwards to please the people in charge. Okay, so we've seen court games and political climbing, but now Swift's satire gets a whole lot darker. He moves from silly games to the deadly game of war, and he does it with one of the most famous allegories ever written: the endless war between Lilliput and its enemy, Blefuscu. Just look at how this whole thing spirals out of control. It all started because of an argument over which end of an egg you should crack open. An emperor's grandfather cuts his finger, so a law is passed. That law splits society in two, the big Endians and the little Endians. And that split leads to rebellion, executions, and eventually a massive, bloody war. Swift was taking a direct aim at the religious wars of his time between Protestant England and Catholic France, basically saying that their deadly conflicts were based on differences that were fundamentally as trivial as how you crack an egg. Now, Gulliver actually becomes a national hero for his role in this war. You'd think he'd be set for life, right? Well, he's about to learn a very hard lesson about politics in Lilliput. No good deed ever goes unpunished. Gulliver's fall from grace happens so fast. One minute, he saves the entire nation by capturing the enemy's fleet, but the next, he makes a fatal error. He shows mercy. He refuses the emperor's order to enslave the enemy, and just like that, the emperor's gratitude is gone. Then, to make matters worse, he puts out a fire in the palace in a very unconventional way, which offends the empress.
So, for saving the kingdom and the queen, his secret punishment is to be blinded and starved to death. It's a brutal lesson. Doing the right thing means absolutely nothing if it bruises the ego of a person in power.
So let's step back for a second. When you put all this together, the silly tightrope dancing, the insane war over an egg, the political backstabbing, it becomes pretty obvious that Swift isn't just writing a fantasy story. He's holding up a mirror. And that is the absolute heart of it. Lilliput might seem like some strange alien world, but every single absurd thing that happens there is meant to reflect one of our own flaws. The fantasy isn't an escape, it's a lens. It's a tool designed to help us see our own world and ourselves a little more clearly. And this tool has a name. It's called satire. And it's not just about telling jokes. It's about using humor and exaggeration and even ridicule as a weapon. Swift is being funny to expose things that are actually corrupt, dangerous, and deeply foolish about the way we live. And that's the genius of Lilliput. By shrinking people down to only 6 inches tall, Swift makes their big ambitions, their deadly wars, their lust for power, all seem laughably small and petty. He literally magnifies our flaws by shrinking the stage they're on, forcing us to see the ridiculousness that we normally ignore in our own lives. In the end, Jonathan Swift wasn't looking for a round of applause. As he said himself, he wasn't writing for our approval. He was writing for our improvement. He wanted to shock people into being better, not just to entertain them. And believe it or not, this was only the first stop on his journey. That's why, 300 years later, this so-called children's story is still one of the most powerful critiques of humanity you will ever read.